Hello, today we have the lecture Disclosing today's non-economy part 2. So what is the content? Well, I'm going to mention this reverse solving method, very cunning method. Then the second thing, the daily hypnosis, that is hypnotizing us day by day. And for the last, an example of the inefficiency of the 8-hour workday. So let's go step by step. First thing, the reverse solving method. Let's get straight to the point. I'm asking you here, for every difficulty there is found a remedy, but it is also possible that for every remedy can be found a difficulty. Well, consider the reverse solving method. It goes in 3 steps. The first step is the search for a nuisance which can be among the population easily expanded. It may go for a contagious disease, for genetically modified food, or for generally unhealthy food or other things. In that respect, the solution, the vaccine or the medicine, must be discovered in advance, therefore before the expanding of the nuisance among the population. The second step, the expansion of the nuisance among the population, this issue. And the third step, the public presentation of the solution for the nuisance, therefore the presentation of the vaccine, the medicine or other solution. So it's the other way around. It's not that we have it's a classic issue, health issue, and then we are searching for the vaccine. No, here it goes for money, for business. So don't be surprised over this method, especially in today's pharmaceutics. Just take a quick look to all the medicines out there and you'll realize that for every little pain or difficulty exists more than one medicine. By the way, do you remember how much medication have you taken in the last year? Think also of how many medications we are consuming today and how much we have, for example, in the 90s of the previous century. Of course, less. Think also how many new diseases and other health issues exist today. Yes, it's true. The lifespan is increasing of a human being, but at the same time is also more saturated with these and other small health issues. And this is ideal for business since healthy people aren't any profit for the pharmaceutics like the dead ones aren't. The curative goes beyond the prevention since the treating is much more profitable than the preventing of various health issues. Further, that the pharmacy is beneficial, I have no doubt. However, that the pharmacy is also very clever, also not. This doesn't mean that the pharmaceutic staff is cunning, since their primary activities provided them the daily bread. I'm referring to the people in position to the status quo, to these elites, corporations, the bankers, the leaders of the hierarchy, which are reaping astronomical profits. But this method is most likely used also elsewhere, not just in pharmacy. Just replace the diseases or medicines with other products and services and you'll be quite clear. For example, this system can be used in ecology, where you can find for any accidental pollution the various cleaners, filters, neutralizers, and so on. Similarly, it is also happening in technology, for example in the manufacture of cars. Today's cars are so unfriendly for servicing that even an auto mechanic has difficulties in repairing a car if this auto mechanic doesn't work in an official service for a specific brand of a car. So it's a, let's say, a universal auto mechanic for many brands, and not to speak about the replacing of a headlamp or of the spare tire on the road. In some cars, this isn't any longer possible, since the headlamps, the headlights are on the road simply replaceable, while the spare tire is often absent. So there exist cars that don't have this spare tire. However, a car cannot be driven without a functioning headlight or with a flat tire. But so we have the towing services, the mechanical services, and the consequential additional costs. The monetary economy is simply loving the curative, not the prevention. The curative, because when things break down, there are the services to repair these things. So, further, the daily hypnosis. Now I will say something about the hypnosis that is influencing our lives day by day, everywhere we go. The daily hypnosis. However, despite today's increased production, people were in our history initially buying only what they really needed, not like today. But since this wasn't liked by the status quo, they had to create certain conditions for an increased consumption. And how they have created the increased consumption? Well, this was done so that they enforced the craving after certain products, which were to reflect man's personal style, image, this imaginary self, the ego. Through the media, they began equating products with lifestyle, with personal image or fashion that must be shown to the world by purchasing a certain product or a service. It can go just for a service. It began with the written advertising, this hypnosis, with the written advertising. So, with newsletters and newspapers, then later through radio programs, and the biggest technological leap has been accounted to TV. And of course, they came yet the internet and the mobile telephony. And as if all of this isn't enough, they are sending us home all kinds of advertising by post also. But even when we are away from home, we can trace the saturation of advertising with all kinds of roadside billboards and leaflets. During walking, for example, by car, by bus, by train, even by plane, and even in public toilets. You go to the toilet and you see in front of you some advertising. And that I don't even speak of the malls, these big shopping centers where the hypnosis is covering all the five senses: the seeing, the hearing, the smelling, the touching, and the tasting. All of this is incorporated with this hypnosis. You can just smell, let's say, a hamburger in the distant restaurant because they for a purpose expand I mean this flow of the food that they are cooking, the smelling. So today's we are all well smart on all sides with advertising, although we aren't always aware of this. But on the other side, the media and advertising are giving the daily bread to a large percentage of people. Further, so today's advertising is in full swing. People are just buying things which they don't necessarily need. But the matrix is also taking care to replace the old trends with the new ones. In fact, without changing the trends, the flow of money would in certain branches come to a standstill. Today, the trends are changing annually and even seasonally, in clothing, for example, in textile industry. But yes, we have the healthy creativity in the making of new products, and on the other side, we have the greed for money by these corporations. This is how are things working today. Otherwise, the money cannot flow if there isn't the constant selling of products and services. The consequence of all this hypnosis is also the cost that we are excessively comparing with others, in particular in respect of appearance, image, property, and financial status. You know how it is when they are forcing the daily imaginary ideals, and all of this is causing unnecessary stress, especially for young people who are even more likely than the adults burdened with their appearance, which they must show to the world. Because of the media, it's also good to be of a certain weight, height, skin tan, and of course, dressed in the latest fashion. This also often leads to difficulties such as anorexia, bulimia, and the consumption of antidepressants. With such a lifestyle, we are consequently excessively burdened with our physical body and not with the entire being made of the human being and the higher self. Um, it goes for pure materiality, this physical body, and there is a lot of suffering. Further, daily hypnosis is also imposing on us all these stereotypes or patterns, for example, that we have to complete the driver's license for a car at a certain age, then that we have to employ at the end of our studies, then that we have to build a house or to live by ourselves, then to get married, for example, start a family, etc. Well, not necessarily in this order, but you very well know how it is. It's difficult because this older generation of people were raised in such a way, and even myself. However, these patterns are causing a lot of stress and suffering to young people, and on the other side, huge gains to the others, to these corporations and so on. Further, still about the daily hypnosis. But how is this daily hypnosis even working in detail so that it changes our alignment? How it comes to this that it changes our alignment, that it convinces us? Well, all of you have read about the learning by heart in school. Learning by heart acts so that you repeat the information until you completely memorize it. You also heard about the positive affirmations that we are repeating, for example, to build our self-confidence when you're dealing with our personal growth spirituality. Well, in both cases, it speeds up our backup level, but both techniques are nothing more than a kind of mild hypnosis. This means that we are focusing our attention onto the absorption of a specific information, so to become, firstly, fully acceptable to the information, and secondly, that we with the multiple repetitions or sensations also memorize or adapt the information as ours, as our truth. The only thing that can turn us away from the absorbing of a certain information are our existing beliefs, definitions, and of course the signpost of our higher self that is telling us that this information is not accordant with us. It's not good for us. But information can be good for us, but if we have outdated beliefs and definitions, so we reject certain important information. It goes both ways. So, this means that they can fill us with the content that is deficient, distorted, or simply negatively oriented around us, everywhere we go. It can be deficient, distorted, or simply negatively oriented, and most often intentionally. As for next, the spiritually unawakened population is functioning predominantly unconsciously. And this is the cause that a person has difficulties in figuring out the bigger picture, what is happening in this matrix. This also causes that programming of the population is taking place almost unconsciously, so that the population doesn't start thinking what is really happening out there. Consider the following: a hypothesis which is basically the truth. The status quo, which represents the matrix, is keeping the population in ignorance so that it doesn't resist the social norms and remain subjugated. So that the status quo is prolonging the control and especially the acquisition of money. The hypnosis must begin in primary school and even earlier, in where the late information must be deficient, distorted, and negatively oriented. The hypnosis must be very attractive and continuous, day by day by day by day, from the first day when you are born. Further, but of all the information that is providing us the matrix is especially the TV the one that is the most hypnotizing and programming us. The spiritual unawakened population is in fact very naively absorbing all the information like the sponge is absorbing water, and especially taking this information for their truth. And the spiritual unawakened population is even enjoying the negative information, since it is giving them the relativity of life. This means that to the other people are happening even worse things, so that it temporarize their mood, their state of being. This relativity works so that the media is imposing the daily news day by day, even the shocking ones, but some people are attached to this information that to other people are happening even worse things. This causes the relativity of life, which temporizes their mood. But you are addicted to such information, you're just listening, but you're not doing anything with to help, let's say, the poor people, to give some information that really can help someone in their spiritual growth. They're just lying on the couch, so to speak. Further, so in this regard, it much depends on the journalists themselves, because if they aren't awakened, then they are spreading mainly distorted or negatively potentiated information and further reinforcing the fear. There is much fear. Thus, there is a homework for the journalists that they make the appropriate changes, since the awakened journalists know what is really useful for the population. Anyway, the programming of the Matrix has come so far today that the media has even convinced the majority of population in the existence of global terrorism. But in fact, it goes for artificially created global terrorism, with some exceptions here and there. Realize that the responsible for terrorism aren't always located in the country that attacks first, but rather in the country who is attacked. The real enemies are hidden behind the curtain and are unwilling to reveal themselves in public. And these are most often completely different people than the ones who are seen on TV every day. And for me, all of this is non-economy. It causes uh, fear, pollution, violence. This for me is also non-economy. The further exploitation of natural resources for warfare, and so on. Non-economy. Further, the media that is under the influence of the status quo, it favors to emphasize the differences between the nations, cultures, races, religions, etc. The difference. They emphasize the differences, and this is not good. Rather than showing the all connectedness of the human race, the similarities. Because the similarities are uniting us, this the differences are, let's say, separating us. But it depends on what kind of energy deformation is laid, of course. The media is in some countries also encouraging the carrying of arms, weapons, as this constitutes a large part of the status quo profit, like in the US. But this is a false solution for artificially created terrorism. Realize yet that the majority of people do not pass away in terrorist attacks, but in everyday riots that aren't even media active. So, these are facts that the majority of people do not pass away, do not die because of terrorist attacks, but in everyday riots that aren't even media active. And why they are not media active? Because there is no business for now there. Thus, the TV is the greatest generator of fear against other people, and so the spiritually unawakened people can quickly act within the framework of the rebellious self and support any government's anti-terrorist decision. But this is causing separation rather than integration. The media have imposed fear into people's unconscious so that people are having so much protection than ever. For example, I was watching some old photos and discovered how freely we were living 20 years ago in our country. In the 90s, for example, in the 80s, even more. How peaceful we were living 20 or 30 years ago, both inside and outside of our houses. But today, many are building security fences around their houses, setting alarms, and even cameras. This means faster flow of money and pollution. More, uh, more fences, more alarms, even cameras. But which is making us only further away from the fellow human being, from the neighbor. Similarly, it is happening in schools or at various night parties, where there is more security and control than ever. In my town, there were no security uh, in the primary and elementary school, and even the parties very rare. Some here and there. Nowadays, it's a completely different picture. So, there is more security than ever, as people are saturated with negativity from the media and education, which is stored in their backup level. How this works, I talked in the lecture, our alignment, and elsewhere. Because, in simple words, the more fear you have, the more inner resistance you have to people that you're going to be robbed, for example, or hit, the more probability exists that you are going to be hit or robbed. And so you have security around you. Yes, the security can help you, but just for a time, because as soon as you go out of your house, you can be hit or involved in violence everywhere practically, and you don't know. So pay attention to your alignment. These cameras, alarms, and security fences is just a temporary thing. So if you're well aligned, very well aligned, everywhere you go, you can live peacefully if you decide so. Further, the consequence of all this hypnosis is also the cause that we are excessively comparing with others, in particular in respect of appearance, image, property, and financial status. Okay, these are already set, I think. Yeah, yeah. Um, okay, this is more or less about all about this daily hypnosis. This is influencing our lives day by day. It's good to be more with yourself. Let's say to be more in peace, in solitude, to detach from surroundings and from this media, to realize who you are actually. Now, for the last thing, the last chapter is basically an example of the inefficiency of the 8-hour workday, of basically of this non-economy. Well, let's conclude with today's hypnosis and non-economy by showing you a ridiculous yet serious example of the inefficiency of today's 8-hour workday. This is an example from my life what I saw. So, once I noticed a roadman of how he was erecting a traffic sign. In fact, I was a passerby, a pedestrian, so that I was observing how he was at a snail's pace placing a new traffic sign from its packaging. And then I almost went laughing because in the meantime was someone on the other side of the road with the greatest excitement digging in his garden. Of course, in his free time. Here I saw the utmost nonsense of the today's system because the roadman was just waiting that the clock struck 3 p.m., the end of the working day here in Slovenia, while the other was working in his garden like time doesn't exist. Such a contrast, and one didn't see the other, and they were just on a different side of the road. So, and an hour later, when I went out again, I saw again that road and how he was still erecting that traffic sign. Actually, he hasn't even taken down the old one. I'm not criticizing that worker because I know that he was a hard-working one, but the typical 8-hour workday that is simply not based on efficiency. Let me express my opinion as simple as possible. That roadman should be responsible for the completing of his work and then to go home where he would use his free time for various benefits, like the one on the other side of the road. Therefore, that roadman should instead of wasting his working hours, use his free time to socialize with his loved ones, to educate his child, to arrange his garden or home, etc. Well, what do you think about that? Well, as you'll see, the natural economy is even better than this that I'm going to explain in the last lectures. Yes, it can be also that worker didn't like his profession, but still, it depends. There are many factors there. The typical 8-hour workday, the co-workers that he may like or don't like, the kind of working, his profession, and so on. But usually, you know how it is. If you love a thing that you love doing, you can do it for many hours, even a day, the entire day. For example, I love talking and teaching, and but then there are certain limits, like throat and so on. But this is another thing, because you love doing such thing. There are physical limits. That worker that was erecting the traffic sign, he was healthy. He was just waiting. There were no physical limitations. So it's good to listen to the signpost of our higher self, like I said in the lecture, the signpost of the higher self, to find the right profession for you, the right primary activity for you. And this is the most important thing. And then to teach others to expand in the knowledge what we can do. And I'm going to mention what we can do in the transition to the natural economy in the last lectures. Well, this is all for today, I think. Yes, this is all for today. The next time I'm going to talk about, I think, disclosing education and employment. Yes, more specific about that sectors. Okay, have a nice day. Bye bye.